deadmau5. Hey guys, it's Will from EDM Tips. Today I'm going to show you how to create a track similar to deadmau5's Strobe, because this is one of the most sought after things I've had request over the entire year, and I wanted to do one of the most requested requests that you guys have asked for. As usual, you can download all the project file, all the samples and presets. I'm just using the Ableton Live stock plugins today, so you can follow along using Ableton, but you can also follow along in any DAW because these techniques will still apply. We'll be creating everything from scratch, but this isn't about just replicating someone's track. This is about understanding how it's put together, understanding the techniques that deadmau5 uses so that you can use it in your own productions and then create your own style by understanding how music works properly. I want to give a massive shout out to my masterclass students. They've achieved some incredible things this year, including DJ Dobril, who's had over 1 million streams on one of his tracks, which I've linked to below. But there are many, many absolutely heroic achievements from the EDM Tips community in general. So thank you for supporting the channel. And without further ado, let's get this done. Let's pop into the DAW, in fact, and get it done. Nice. So first thing it's worth noting is how few elements there are to this track. Now I've got my notes here, of course, but you can see there's a bass line, there's a riff, and then there's this top melody, and then we've got the kicks and the drums as well. And we're going to be touching upon this SC thing in a little bit, and I'll show you how to use it. But first, let's just get things started. I've got all the MIDI already. You can download the MIDI if you just search for the MIDI. What I'm going to do is create a wavetable. So I'm just going to choose a saw wave and put it to full sustain, not much release. And then already, let's have a listen. I think I'll take out some of the high end and let's have a listen. Okay, that doesn't sound very good on its own. So let's just duplicate that wavetable. Let's copy it and stick it on the riff track. And now let's have a listen. So you recognize that riff, right? And all that is a saw wave. Now what I'm going to do is richen that Thor wave. Come on, mate. I'm going to richen that saw wave up by putting the frequency to the top in terms of the riff, just so there are more high frequencies coming through. And then I'm going to start applying some unison. So let's start with the bass. Let's choose unison noise. And this is just a bit of a grittier sound, which is why I've chosen noise. Don't want to do too much. So that's the bass line. Next, we are going to go to the riff. Now, it's worth noting the original of this tune is in B major. I've done it in C major because then it's easy for you to recreate. You just do all the white notes from C up to C. That is your scale, so you can't really hit a wrong note. So let's jump over to the riff and we're going to richen that up as well. You can hear it's a bit glitchy, a bit gnarly. And deadmau5 uses loads of analog synths. He's got real big synth racks in his studio. We're trying to create a similar feeling just using soft synths. So that's why we want a little bit of artifacts in there. But what we also want to do is make this even thicker. So I'm going to turn the second oscillator on, choose another saw wave, and I'm going to detune it slightly. And that's going to make it slightly richer. But I'm going to thicken it up even more. Is that possible, I hear you ask? Yes, it is possible. This is how you do it. I'm going to group this and open it up here. So now if I duplicate this wavetable, I've now got two wavetables playing the exact same MIDI notes. And because one of them has got the unison on, which kind of softens the sound a little bit, takes out some of those high frequencies, for the second wavetable, I'm going to turn off unison like this. And that is instantly going to make it a little bit more crunchy, a little bit more buzzy. So let's just feed in that top wavetable with the rich, thick one. And I think I might add a little bit of noise to this. So if we turn on the second oscillator and then choose a white noise wave. It's a little bit grittier than this one, which has got a bit of unison, which makes it slightly thicker, slightly richer. Nice. Okay, now what we're going to do is add some delay effects to this riff. So I've just created an auxiliary channel and I've put an echo. Let's just build this from scratch actually. So let's get an echo device on there first. Let's go echo. Here we go. 100% wet because it's on a auxiliary channel. Then we are going to choose a dotted 16th for the delay signal. And let's just feed some of this riff into it. Let's put ping pong on so it bounces left to right. Let's add some reverb, soften it up. Take out some of the low frequencies. Now what we're going to do, which is a bit of a clever trick, is we're going to put a compressor after that and we're going to take the dry signal from this riff and we're going to sidechain the delayed signal against it. And that's going to just duck the delayed signal whilst the dry riff is playing. You have to be pretty careful with this. We don't want to completely duck it all the time. So if we get a really fast attack on that compressor, really fast release, that compression is going to kick in really quickly. And then as soon as a note isn't playing on our dry riff, it's going to allow that compressor to come off so we can still actually hear the delayed signal. Just subtle. Now it's not so noticeable here because we've got long notes playing all the time, but if we go to the beginning part of the track, you can hear it a lot more. Let's just turn it down a bit because there's a bit much there. And with the bass. Like we're pretty much there in terms of the sounds we're using, but now we want to create that deadmau5 beat as well. I've got some really cool tricks to show you there. But before we do that, let's move on to the melody that comes in the break, the main break. And again, I'm going to throw a wavetable on there and just create a sound from scratch. So let's just hear what it does at the moment. So let's make that a bit richer and a bit grungier, as in the original track Strobe. So saw wave for the first oscillator. Let's use the ADSR controls here to make it take a bit longer to die out. Let's get a second oscillator, turn that on, and I'm just going to choose, I don't know, let's just experiment. We want a bit more high frequencies in there. Bit more character. I like that. Bit more release. I don't know if this is exactly the same. Well, it's obviously not exactly the same, but I'm liking the sound of it. Let's get some more unison. Again, noise is just going to make it a bit grittier, but to add even more grit, what I'm going to do is choose erosion. Now, saturation's another way to add more upper harmonics, but erosion's really cool. That's obviously too much. So let's just pare it back a bit. And it's just a little bit gritty. And now let's filter out some of those low frequencies, some of those high frequencies. Nice. And then we're going to use the same delay signal that we were using for the main riff, and we're just going to share it. We're just going to feed some of our melody into that too. And now all together. Yes. Absolute tune. So good. Okay, right, now let's get onto the beat. As I said, there aren't that many elements in this track, but that's not to disparage the absolute genius that is Strobe. Of course, I've just thrown these MIDI notes in. It's all about the composition. It's all about the sounds chosen and created and the way it moves and develops over time. Anyway, let's get on to the kicks. So I'm going to use 2 kicks for this. I'm going to use a top kick. So let me just go to my kicks. So drum hits, kicks. And we need a toppy, real sounding kick, like an acoustic kick. Maybe. This one. That's fine. There's a little bit of a tick at the end of that, if you hear this. I think about here. So let's just make sure that's taken out. Lovely. So let's just program that in on every beat. I can't remember what I'm doing. There we go. So let's just put that on every beat. I'm going to turn some of this stuff down. Calm down, okay? Right, in terms of that kick, what we need to do is add a little bit of room reverb. This is how I do it because I don't want to be sending bass frequencies to the room reverb. So what I'm going to do is first take out the low frequencies of this kick. Just here, like this, by adding a filter. You could do it with an EQ, of course. You've got a bit of silence before the actual first transient, so I'm just going to move to that first transient. And this is how I'm going to add some room reverb. So if you open up the routing in the drum rack, right click down here in drop audio effects, create return chain, and then you can select any of your auxiliary channels that you've created. So I've created one by default. I always had the room reverb, which is just a really short decay on a reverb. And let's just close all that up. And now you can see I've got this send control just for the kick. It's very quiet, isn't it? Let's bump it up a bit. Feed some of that into the reverb. So this is off, and that's with. It's just to give a little bit of atmosphere to our sound. Now we want the main kick, the main body of the kick. So I need something a bit more beefy. Okay, I'm going to use this one. Now what I'm going to do for this is filter out some of the high end because we've already got the high end being catered for by this kick. So now we need the low end on this. I'm going to transpose it down a semitone. And that's just because I think it sounds a bit deeper, a bit nicer. And let's take out the high end. Again, I'm going to just put the filter on. And filter it out. Don't know why I can't hear it now. Can't have filtered that much out. Don't know if I've pressed the wrong button. Okay, that's weird. Don't know what's going on there. No idea what's just happened, but it seems to be taking out all of the kick, even though it's a high pass. So God knows why that's happening. Anyway, taxi, let's just leave the filter off and we're going to throw an EQ on to do the same job. So let's put an EQ8 on after that. Just choose a high cut. Take out the high end. And now we've got the high kick and the low kick. So let's just make sure they're both programmed in. And let's have a listen. Now I'm going to gel those together by using a compressor at the end of the chain. So both kicks are being fed into this compressor. I'm going to choose a 30 millisecond attack. That allows the transient of the kick to pop through. And I'm just going to do this to taste. Maybe a little less of that high kick. A bit more of the low kick. So it just tightens it up a little bit. And now let's feed it in with our bass line. Excellent. Okay, so we're kind of getting that now. But in terms of this kick, what we want to do is, yeah, now get the rest of the beat. So let's get a clap in there. Let me know if you're enjoying this so far, guys. Give me a hell yeah or an amen, brother. We come to the end of another great year for EDM Tips. Thank you so much for watching these videos. I really appreciate it. And as usual, you can download this project file, all the samples completely free below this as well. So that's what there is to say about that. Okay, let's get some claps on the go. Now, some of the older stuff as well, particularly like this for Deadmau5, he had pre-transient kicks. Claps. So they would happen just before the beat, and that gives it a nice loose feel, but it also allows him to push the compressors, push the limiter slightly harder because you don't have a transient build up all in the same place. So I'll show you what I mean by that. If we go to the, let's see, what claps have I got? Let's go to my snares. Like, these aren't the exact same samples, obviously, but this one, you can hear there's a slight slur in it. It's like there's a snare and a clap played just one before the other. And we're going to use that to our advantage. So if we just take the volume down a bit, put it on every other kick, like this. But what I'm going to do is now I'm going to select them all, zoom in, and I'm just going to move this slightly before the kick. Now, I don't know what to call this, so for want of a better name, let's just call it strobe. No, okay, let's call it for lack of a better name. Yeah, that's much better, given the EP this is from. Okay, this is now called For Lack of a Better Name. Let's do it. Okie dokie. Here we go. So it's a little bit weak, and we'll very quickly kind of make that sound better. So what I need to do is grab another clap just to get some more frequencies in there. Like a snare. I'll make this a lot quieter. It's all about just getting the right sounds. You can either layer them, or you can just find one sound that hits all those frequencies you want. But we're going to layer this one. You can hear just gentle layering just adds another layer to it. But now what we want to do is create a little bit of that pumping effect that Deadmau5 uses. And the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to create a sidechain channel. I've already done it here. All it is a drum rack with a very short, sharp tick sample. So if I just change this from sends only to master, you can hear the sample I'm using. Just a 808 rim shot. But I'm selecting it to sends only, so you never actually hear this. You only use it for the sidechain duck. So you can see here, sidechain duck, whack, whack. So the reason I do that is because you've got more control over the length of that duck. If you are using if you're using a sidechain signal from the kick, it's going to duck it for as long as that kick sample is. So using a short, sharp tick just gives you more control. So instead of making bad jokes about waterfowl, let's actually apply some of this compression technique. So I'm going to put a compressor after the drum rack. I'm going to open up this little fella, press sidechain, and then take sidechain as is my input. Really sharp attack, pretty sharp release. And let's now listen what happens to these drums. So you can hear, that's a very extreme example. The pre-transient's playing, then that sidechain is ducking it right out, but we only want a gentle effect of that. That's probably about right. So that's our sidechain ducking. Now let's put the kind of beats in between, the hi-hats. So I'm going to use a shaker in this instance. So let's go drum hits, shakers. This one will do. And that one's a nice one as well. Just a short, sharp one. And there's a bit too much of an attack on that, so let's tighten it up. Transients on drums are super important. In fact, transients on everything is super important. If you can get those transients right, it makes a big difference. So let's just program this in. We're going to have a shaker, exactly where you'd expect the hi-hat to be. Oh, that's why it's so quiet, because all of the velocities are right down. All right, let's whack all of these up. And then turn down our drums because it's going to be too loud now. And then let's get this shaker. Every other beat, just as you would an open hat, like this. And now I'm going to put in the 16th shakers, but I'm going to use the velocity like this to alter the volume of them. And that just adds more movement and interest to the whole groove, coupled with the fact you've got this sidechain bounce. And it just adds extra movement. So let's just duplicate all these 16th shuffles. And that's pretty much it. So now we've got the sidechain compressor channel set up. Let's add some to the bass as well and the main riff, just to give it that whole thing, that pumping effect. So let's open this up, sidechain. On the riff as well, faster release or just less dark. You know, not everything needs this to be ducked the same amount. It's usually useful to have the same release time, but you don't need the ratio to be the same on everything, because some things will need to be ducked more than others. And let's have a listen to it now. Taxi, okay. Nice. Right, now that's kind of almost it. You know, when you get to that big break as well, you've got the sidechain turned off, so you're not having everything being ducked, and then it's epica. You know, you might want to take out some of the bass frequencies on the bass in the break. That's a bit better. Maybe on the riff as well. Yeah. And then when everything's in, I'm going to best turn my monitoring down, otherwise I'll start shouting. Maybe don't need it to duck that much on the bass. And then obviously you got the big effects and stuff that, like the at the beginning, like just an impact. Let's bring up this. I'd have to compare the tracks side by side, but you know, there aren't that many elements. Anyway, I really hope you've enjoyed this and seen that as long as you kind of know what you're doing, you don't need to overcomplicate things. It's all about the idea. It's all about executing a few simple things that will give your music size. It will give it an organic feeling. It will give it width by careful use of things like auxiliary channels. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Don't forget, you can download this project file below the video. I'm going to do a bit more work on this. I'll compare it to the original track as well. Just, you know, referencing things up a bit. And yeah, thank you very much for watching. I will see you in the new year. And until then, cheers and happy producing.